Tonight on the Detroit Lions podcast, Case is popping up all over the world. That's not starch in Riz's pants. And Chris says, let's get it on.
Lions fans, it's time for the podcast you've been waiting for. The show where Kool-Aid runs blue, faces turn red, and rose-colored glasses never go out of style. This is the Detroit Lions Podcast, your Detroit Lions and Reddit connection. And now, two guys who run a 4-minute 40, Chris and Case.
Hey, howdy ho, Lions fans. Welcome to the Detroit Lions Podcast, episode 259. This is the official Detroit Lions podcast for Reddit. I am your dashing host, Chris, and with me is my good friend and co-host, Case. How you doing, man?
Good, Chris. I'm just over here practicing my social distancing.
The world's been practicing that with you for years, Case. What are you talking about?
I have like 3 friends.
Bigger number than I would have guessed. All right, today's show, we got a big one going on. We're going to talk about free agency again. We got Case along with Riz this time. We're going to have a deeper, darker, sometimes lighter talk about that. We're going to talk about what does it mean for the NFL draft for the Lions? What's the strategy here? That and a whole lot more. Hey, we're going to even take your calls. How's that sound? That sounds like a good time, right? Got a great show lined up for you guys. Case, you ready to go, my man?
All by myself.
Let's kick this off and break it down.
All right, a couple of quick announcements first. Check us out and help us out on the Patreon.
You want to
Special
get this,
thanks
Jeff?
to Dylan from
Guam.
He's so good.
There you go.
He's so good. He reminds me how Arlovsky did it. I can't even say his name now, right? Of course, our very first donor, Mathis and Brian B. I prevailband.com. Check them out. They hang out with us all the time in our wonderful Slack, and they got there because they're Patreon donors. Patreon.com/Detroit Lions Podcast. You can join. It's as little as $1 a month. All day action. You're sitting around in quarantine. What a great way to get your Lions fix. Some of the best, most intelligent Lions chat on the internet. Patreon.com/Detroit Lions Podcast. Donate as little as $1 a month to the show. You can donate more. Don't feel limited. We don't want to limit you here. Donate as much you want, and we'll get you access to the Slack chat, some preview information. Dropped some big ones today for the folks in the chat. If you haven't seen it yet, Slackers and Patreon people, you'll enjoy that. Some hot info coming up. That's good stuff. All right, give us a like on Facebook. Facebook.com/The Detroit Lions Podcast, Instagram, Detroit Lions Podcast, and on the Twitter machine, the very best place to see Case.
I want to be all by myself.
For God's sakes. At DED Lions Podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Detroit Lions Podcast, and rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, iHeart, Pandora, all those great places. And we love it when you do that. We love it. We love those 5-star reviews. They help so much, and appreciate everybody who's put up such kind reviews recently. And if you got constructive criticism, we're all in on it. Hit it in the subreddit and leave a comment. We put a new post up every time, and we interact very diligently because we care. Give us a call via Skype, Detroit Lions Podcast, all one word, Detroit Lions Podcast, or call us on the Lions line, 929-33-LIONS. It's 929-335-4667. Leave us a message and get a chance to hear yourself on the show.
Tighten your chin straps, kids. It's time to review this week in Reddit.
All right, it's time to talk about all the fun and exciting things going down this week in Reddit. It's so much easier to say when I say it fast. I'm telling you guys, I stumble the heck out of it when I try to do it slow. Really quick, want to kick it off with it's a different kind of announcement. I think this is something that people will appreciate, and because it's for you, really. We've been doing some work with our old friend. You guys, have you ever heard of Lions Wire, Risden?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes, I am.
There's a guy over there. His name's Eric Schlitt. You may have met him sometime. He's a great writer, does great work. He does a podcast as well. We say it's the yin to our yang. It's the chocolate chips in our cookies, all that kind of stuff. We're working, with him, not together on shows, but we know we're very complimentary types of shows. And in this time of quarantine and kind of being alone and not getting out, maybe having to sit around a little more than you want, and then the fact that there's no sports on TV, I know it's hurting a lot of people. We've decided we're going to coordinate some of our stuff. And we're going to make sure that you guys have a steady stream of content. We're not sure that between us we can get something going every day, but we're going to make sure we don't step on each other with our content. So you guys can watch and take part and have good content to interact with throughout the week. So make sure you check out Eric Schlitt, his podcast, Lions Breakdown. It's on the iTunes. Give him a listen. He's a great guy and does some good stuff. And like I said, it's very complimentary. If you listen to our two podcasts, that's all you really need in the land of the Lions, and you'll have everything you need. So check out Schlitt. He's doing his thing. We're doing ours, and we're here trying to make it so you guys have a much better quarantine and have something to do instead of climbing the walls. All right. Let's see. A lot of stuff going on. Oh, I want to talk. We'll have Scott Bishop on Monday. We're going to do a 2 p.m. live broadcast again. Scott from WJR. He and I are going to do a quick show for you guys. Another little dive into some Lions news and talk. Okay?
Scott also technically still writes for Lions Wire, though he hasn't done anything in a while. I'm going to kick him to write something about it.
He didn't tell you he's going to write a Detroit Lions podcast now.
There you go.
There you go. All right, let's get into it.
Scott's a great dude. It'll be informative. Awesome. He's got an interesting perspective and delivery on things.
Yeah,
I love Scott.
Yeah,
Scott's a great dude.
Absolutely. Had a good time at Senior Bowl.
Yes,
that was a lot of fun. All right, let's talk about this. The big news. Riz, there's nothing like the sunrise and sunset and Mulebach signing and taxes and death. You say something out loud in front of a bunch of people, and somebody goes and flips the whole dang script.
They
on
sure
you.
Do.
You got roasted a little bit for that one, didn't you?
Darius. Yeah, too.
Darius Lee. He's as we said. Hey, everything we saw from him and heard, he had respected Patricia. He was a team player. Said he was a mature 12-year-old. And I regret.
We had just talked about him being a 12-year-old, but not a malicious 12-year-old.
Yes.
And then he comes out and does what a lot of 12-year-olds do. And I have a 14-year-old son. My daughter's just 11, so I don't have a 12-year-old right now, but I'm close enough to know they get irrationally wacky from time to time.
Yep. And boy, did he ever. I've got some things that I'll say at some point, I'm sure, about it here. And they'll be today, don't worry. But I wanted to first let you go, Riz, and just kind of rationalize what's happening here.
Yeah, so his reaction, and it's an interesting reaction because I think he went on it was WJR with Mitch Albom, was it not?
Yes.
Where he went on it and said,
God, they had to have been like just so excited that he said the things he did because they get an unbelievable amount of coverage out of it.
The replays are crazy, yeah.
Yes, they do. And he said in his first year with Patricia, and I think that's sort of where I lost where I had said, because he reverted back to talking about the first year of Patricia, which was awful for just about everybody involved, including Matt Patricia.
Yeah.
And it was clear that on his exit, he was ready to unload about that because he had been, to Slay's credit, he had been very diplomatically quiet about it, both on and off the record, for the last, year, a little over a year. He saw the change in Patricia from year 1 to year 2, but that got thrown away now that he doesn't have to hold his tongue anymore. And he let out a lot of things that he and a lot of players who were here in 2018 wanted to say. And he was not the only one that did it. A backup tight end who was in camp for, a handful of days spouted off.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah. I don't even remember his name. It's not important. I knew he was from Richmond because I remember he had a Richmond Spider tattoo on his arm, and I pointed that out to him. But that's like the only thing I ever remember about the guy. He said what a lot of players wanted to say. He said what he wanted to say for a long time. And I don't blame him for venting. He can let it out now. I don't doubt anything that he said was true. Based on conversations I've had with people and with Darius himself, I absolutely believe everything that he said is 100% accurate.
Suck my Risden.
Yeah. I don't think he said crank either, as was cleaned up for social media purposes.
Just quoting Darius Lee.
Yeah.
Quoting trying to be permanently demonetized over here.
Right. Yes. We were directly quoting Matt Patricia as relayed by Darius Lee there. it's difficult because we know, Chris, you and I saw it firsthand in Mobile. We have seen a different Matt Patricia, and Slay somewhat alluded to that in his interview as well. Nobody's getting focused on that, and probably rightfully so, because between that happening and the relative negative reviews of what's happened around Detroit for the last week and a half in free agency and roster moves, it's hard to find anything positive to say about the team right now. And Slay has no problem carrying the flag of being I got free, I'm out of the, and all the negativity can ride on his shoulders, and he's happy with that. That's part of being a 12-year-old, is that you sometimes carry flags that you might regret later.
He might regret later. You said
I would remind him that Jim Schwartz is his new coach. That's all I'll say about that.
It's old as
I think we all remember Jim Schwartz from how he handled people in Detroit and from talking to people in Philly. He ain't changed. It's the same Jim Schwartz.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned the backup tight end, Duran Harmon.
No.
I never heard
his name is Garrett something.
Oh, okay. I'm talking about the DB. I'm sorry.
No, there was a tight end.
Yeah, you're right. I was pulling the wrong name out of my head here.
I want to say Garrett Hedlund. I know that's not right because I think that's an accurate
I'm
singer.
trying to find it, but
but he was I called the just a handful of days, and he's like,
is it Garrett Hudson? Is that the one?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
The guy who's the most hungover is the one that comes up with the name first.
Okay, so he says on Twitter, of course, that Matt Patricia cussed out Kerryon Johnson in front of the team for not knowing a random trivia question about what year Ford Field opened, right?
Okay. Right.
And that gets, because of the atmosphere that's already, created, that gets, pushed way further than it probably should have to begin with. But then he immediately follows it up by saying, actually, there was a sense of humor to the whole thing, and Kerryon didn't seem affected. And it was like,
he also prefaced it by saying that there are on the walls in the practice facility, you walk by all these factoids. And Patricia told them at the beginning of the week that they were going to be tested on it. And they got tested, and Kerryon didn't know.
So, okay. I'm not here. I promise you all that even though I wanted Matt Patricia to come here, I'm not 100% sold. I'm not trying to be a homer for Matt Patricia or Bob Quinn, but it's become pretty clear as, various other things have surfaced, this included, that we're very, very much just getting one side of the equation being reported on, as opposed to a well-rounded, like, well, okay, yeah, this happened, but that's not exactly how it happened.
So, suck a bag of Richards. That's how I'm going to start, okay? Because I think at least once we've all said that to each other, and I get that we're friends. I just can't see. Look, I understand it was Coach's first year and things happen, right?
Right.
But for a grown ass man at the time, what was he? 25, 27, somewhere in there, right?
Slay would have been 27 or 27 probably.
Yeah, and he's talking up some guys, and Coach tells him, "Quit sucking his, whatever." Look, there's a lot of, I've worked in a lot of environments where saying that is how you say hello. Okay.
I work in a kitchen. It's literally every other word out of our mouths is, profanity of some kind or another. And we say truly inappropriate things all the time. It's just, it is the norm.
I work now.
So like in my head, that's how I hear it.
And where the environment I work now, I wouldn't say that except to people that are friends at work. Right. I think the coach and player relationship isn't necessarily a boss-employee relationship, because there's a lot of mentoring that happens. There's a lot of getting to know each other. It's a much closer relationship. And I think what happened there is Coach has close relationships and treats close people a little bit differently, and probably thought that Slay was a man and could exchange like a barb here and there instead of a whimpering little, whatever. That's to me, it's not that big a deal. And even then, if it was, Slay say, hey man, I don't appreciate that in the moment. And then you correct somebody. If I told Riz suck a bag of Richards and he said, something, that's not my thing, I wouldn't say it to him anymore. It'd be over and be okay, sorry, and that's it. Not being man enough to stand up and say, I don't like that in the moment, and then waiting and burning down the house on the way out.
Well, no, I'm gonna go back against that for a little bit, because this is his first, one of the first interactions that he's had with this guy. Mm-hmm. It's Patricia certainly not understanding his role. He's not reading the room at all.
Agree.
And if that's the tone that he wants to set for his team when he's first getting in there, that's awful.
But it wasn't in a room. It was a one-on-one thing. Okay. Even again, he understand.
Well, no, he said it was in a meeting room because he said that Glover Quinn was sitting next to him, and Glover was like, "Hey, chill, dude. We'll talk about this later."
I'm looking at
that is a.
Something just now in the chat.
If you're new, if you're the new head coach, you got to understand that maybe not everybody's going to understand where you're coming from, especially when you're going to a team that had Jim Caldwell.
Totally get it.
Grandpa Caldwell, Papa Smurf was your was your coach.
I get it.
I understand that you want to establish that culture, but that's probably not the best way to do it. That's taking a hatchet to remove a fly from your forehead.
So
it's
I
terrible
get that.
tone.
I get
I get
that.
It's an indication that Patricia, at that point, anyways, and I do think that this has changed, by the way, but at that point had no concept of what he was doing as a head coach.
That's too far. I think he may have no concept of
social
cues.
I think his concept
of
wasn't going to work.
Right?
Yes.
Right. And so in the chat, I'll just take Carter really quick. Patricia, an engineering math guy, misunderstood social cues. I'm shocked.
That's great. I love it.
And absolutely. And really quick, okay, so let me just hit this one thing. Again, it's on Slay. If he's look, I don't know. Any neighborhood.
That's your boss, though. Are you going to go to your boss on the first day when
I'm going to tell my boss that's not okay to talk to me like that? Yeah, I am.
I wouldn't do it right then, though. I'd do it privately afterwards. I wouldn't do it in public like that.
2.5 years later on the way out? No, if you want that
behavior
to stop,
honest to God, that's exactly what I would do.
Oh, no, I'd say it in the moment. No,
I would not, because that guy controls my paycheck.
No, doesn't matter.
He's going to make me run up. He's going to make me build the hill that I'm going to run up if I do that.
No, you got a contract. He's not going to do that. You have every obligation when somebody offends you to say that's not okay. Okay, where I'm from, that's not okay. Let's handle it differently. Because he doesn't have to yell at him. He doesn't have to freak out. It's two adults, right? As an adult, you handle it and say that's not okay. Don't talk that way to me. It's not okay. I'm here to play ball. I'm here to be coached and do the damn best I can for this team. But you can't talk to me like that. That's not okay. And then that sets the tone for everybody, especially when you first meet somebody. I don't care who it is. They first walk in the room and start talking like that, and you don't like it. You say no. That's not okay. It's on you. You own half of that relationship. And if you allow it to go and you continue to allow it to go without saying, you know what, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that.
So I would never.
I feel like I understand.
I would never bring that
Chris.
up publicly. No,
but I also don't think that's realistic.
Oh, no. It's absolutely realistic. I do it all the time.
I understand that that's your reality. I'm just not sure that's everyone else's reality. Yeah. Okay. So Jeff, I came into this week thinking that you and I were going to be button heads a lot, but I actually remember a lot of the things you said about Patricia before we hired him. And while I was all excited about the prospect, and a lot of those things very much have come to fruition, about his ability to, in a room. And, right. While I agree, and I absolutely agree, that things are improving, I do think you were absolutely right. That was a concern, and it was a thing that he needed to work on. And there are some guys, and unfortunately, Slay might not have had the maturity to overcome it in the long term. Even if and I'm not really trying to come down that hard on Slay. Like he did overcome it in terms of doing his job, not as well as he used to, but but
that's a good point.
He did mostly overcome, that to keep his mouth shut or whatever until it, was an option for him to open it again. But Patricia really did come in with some things he needed to work on in terms of working with people. And you said that. You absolutely said that. And a lot
of people who cover the Patriots told me that. It was very easy for them to see it.
And I don't think I ever told you were wrong specifically about that. I was just hoping that it wasn't going to be an issue. And my hope that it wasn't going to be an issue obviously didn't come to the fruition I wanted it to be. But I, like you said again too, I do think, we've seen some major growth from him in that area. And it's just a matter of was it enough fast enough? Right. And will it have been enough fast enough?
Yeah. And one of the things that's come, we talk about how he runs Romeo Crennel's defense rather than Bill Belichick's defense, and I think that's proven to be true over time. Even though he never directly coached under him, there's a lot more Bill Parcells to Patricia than there is Bill Belichick.
Sure.
And if you go back and look, Bill Parcells without Bill Belichick was a 500 coach. Yeah. And I think that's probably what Patricia's ceiling is, quite honestly, based on it. And the way that he deals with people, the way he interacts with the media, the way that he is profanely negative towards players a lot, that is 100% Parcells. That's much more than Belichick was. He chose the wrong Bill path to follow.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll see. Everybody improves over time, and I'll say the last thing about Slay on this, and I want to be clear. I'm not excusing Coach for what happened, right?
Yeah.
But I am saying Slay owns half that relationship, and I think you let yourself be walked on if you don't tell people that they're not speaking to you in a way that's appropriate for the situation or for your relationship or whatever. The other thing though is he says he loves the fans, the team, everything else, but then he tries to burn it all down and start the place on fire on the way out. That's not helping the fans at all. That's not who. What does he plan
not a super mature
gain?
Response.
What does he plan to gain by doing that? How does that help anybody doing what?
I think he's going for the Darius Slay fan versus the Lions fan,
right?
And the player and like the Lions fans who are upset with the state of affairs. Hey, you're still my fan.
They're buying it big time.
Follow me to Philadelphia.
All in.
Follow along with me. And that's that. You're absolutely right, Case. That is happening.
Yeah, they are, and they're gonna see a very similar situation, I think, that's happened with cornerbacks that are highly paid in Philadelphia before. I hope he does well. Again, Darius Slay, his outlook on life and his personality and stuff are just crazy good. Would love to live my life like him. I say it all the time, but this move. Just really,
it's a misstep.
Oh, it's
be kind.
I think it's actually in the end the effect and the detriment is actually to the number of people is a lot worse than the original offense that he's complaining about and held on to for 2.5 years.
I won't entirely argue with that, but I also think
it's weak. It's weak.
Yeah,
it's just weak. Lost a lot of respect for him. So all right,
yeah,
I won't argue with that.
There you go. Picked up some free agents, one of which I know you wanted to talk about. Case Halapulavati Vaitai, offensive tackle.
Who, Chris? Who was that?
Halapulavati Vaitai.
Say it again.
Halapulavati Vaitai. I got you.
Nicely done, bro.
Thank you.
We are really impressed with you right now.
Why couldn't I say that? Why the question?
Who's our number 3 cornerback right now?
Warrior. I will get that. Okay, so Case, what do you think we're doing there? With
I very explicitly told Jeff that I wanted to come into this week and kind of fight him about the things that he initially said about Big V. But then I listened to you guys' show after free agency midweek here, and I honestly had very little to disagree with. Okay, so the issue that I had initially was that I felt many people looking at, and it seemed ubiquitous at the moment that everyone who was looking at him was looking at him through the lens of the 2018 Super Bowl and NFC Championship game. It was like that was the only thing they seemed to be focusing on. And that was 3 seasons ago. I mean, well, it depends on, how you want to pace things out. But it was his sophomore year, and he's played 2 seasons since then as a backup. Granted, no argument. We don't need to go into the whole Lane Johnson and what's his face,
Jason Peters. They're really good.
Thank you. We don't need to go into that whole thing. We also we don't super need to go into the context that they also drafted another tackle. I get that 100%. I'm with that. But if we're looking strictly at what he produced while he was on the field, and we're looking back that long ago on a young player on a rookie contract who was raw to begin with, I'm just not sure that that's in any way representative of what we should expect, because there were 2 years of growth between then and now, and that was where my issue was. And as long as we're on the same page that growth it seems based on results, based on whatever film has been watched and whatever PFF has to say and whatever Bryce says, which I appreciate from Bryce. I just think that's more where we should be focusing on the value as opposed to what happened back then.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's not. It's still more money than I would have given him, and it's still more. Sure. It's still an above market value.
I can't argue with that.
Especially when I watched, as you know, I cover the Browns. They signed Jack Conklin for $12 million a year.
Yeah.
I think he's a tad overrated, but he's also a lot better and more proven than
that. Actually seems pretty low as a per year.
Yeah.
For him.
Honestly, the Browns regime's kicking butt in free agency, and that's one of the prisms that I look at, and is one of the reasons why I'm probably a little bit more negative, because I see a different front office that's new, that's doing things that I really like. Not all of them. They've made a couple of interesting choices too, but they by and large seem to have a good feel for not overspending. And I would have thought that Vaitai would get 35 over 5 instead of 45, because you are paying for upside. He is going to be a starter. I'm tired of the people who are saying you're paying your back. No, he's not a backup in Detroit. They're not paying him for what he did in Philadelphia. They're paying him for what he will do in Detroit. Yeah. Which is a smart way of approaching free agency. You don't pay for what guys did elsewhere. You pay for what they're going to do for you in the future. And I do think the mistake
a lot of teams make. Boy,
they are anticipating Vaitai being as good as Rick Wagner was for them. The other thing is, when Wagner came here, he was good. He was very good his first year.
He had off a little bit, but he was 3 solid years. Even if he was,
people still hated him from the very beginning.
Oh, that's the life of an offensive lineman.
When they signed him to that contract, everybody thought, "Oh my God, we're signing him for that. He's Orlando Pace. He should be playing like a Hall of Famer out there, because that's the contract that they give him." Yeah, and that is going to happen with Big V. I know it's going to happen, and the fans are going to make this a lot worse than he actually is, and that bothers me.
I think you're absolutely right. There's just no winning for most offensive linemen. They're always going to get overpaid in the eyes of fans.
And this is more peculiar with Detroit than it is with other teams that I've seen and covered. They expect just unrealistically crazy, lofty play from their offensive line. The Lions' offensive line was the best part of the offense this past year. They were good. They were a top 10, top 12 offensive unit, and they weren't that bad the year before either. And for Lions fans to come out and say that they were absolute dog crap all the time and just poo-poo it.
I see it all the time.
If you think that line was bad, watch the Houston Texans, for the love of God. Watch the Browns last year. Watch the Bengals.
But Jeff, Stafford got hurt.
So I will tell you something that we're not talking about with Vaitai is that he is a little bit cheaper, not in year one because of the dead cap, but he's a little bit cheaper for about the same kind of a guy, except he's way better at run blocking. And that's a big thing for this team. That's a big change, and it's going to be a big help because I don't know if you guys noticed, we haven't been a really good running team for a couple of years. And
I'll back off on that though. They were the best running Lions team since 2012 last year.
Hey, that is a low bar, but a good precedent.
Yeah.
They were out of the bottom. They were out of the bottom third in yards per attempts for the first time since 2013. The year where both Joik and Reggie had 500 yards.
Yep.
I think that was. It might have been 13. I think it was 12. No, 12 was the bad year. 13 was that year.
Yep. So in the chat, we're hearing it was the Vikings that ate his lunch, right? And that's true. Vikings defense is a shell of what it was after this free agency.
Emerson Griffin gone.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
Come to Detroit, please. Come to Detroit, please.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Definitely younger and Logan, you're right. 10 million now is also less than it was 5 years ago. If you think about how the cap goes and so on. So and with the youth. It's so effectively we are definitely paying less as a percentage of cap for about an equal player. And if people can think about it through that lens, that's probably a really, really good move for this team. And I think with Bevel's offense and Hank the Tank Fraley, who we have a ton of respect for.
I'm very bullish on Hank Fraley as the offensive line coach. I like it a lot. And I also like that Jeff Davidson hasn't gone away. He's not. Lions fans are going to dump on him as they do all things Lions offensive line, which is crazy because
we've been around Prince for so long.
All these guys are terrible. Oh my God, we can't live without Grant Glasgow. I can't reconcile that in my head. I don't know how people do it. I really don't. I need to take drugs because I just don't get it.
Let's call Scott. I'm just picking. It's kind of mean. Anyway, okay. So Halapula Vaitai. Oh yeah, I got it. Halapula Vaitai.
Big V.
The trick is you got to do it play that funky music, white boy. Halapula Vaitai. That's why you always see me pause before Vaitai. That's the secret.
Casey and the Sunshine Band.
All right. I know there's another guy Case is interested in that we signed. Jamie Collins. I don't know if you guys saw Riz. It was in your article on Lions Wire. With the backflips across the field.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Holy beepity bop. That was amazing. That was he was more spry than a high school or college cheerleader / gymnast. He was just bending and rolling across the field like nothing.
That was from the summer of 2018, so it's not that long ago.
Wow.
No, take it. That was summer of 2019 because he was in Cleveland the year before that.
Case, if you want to see the most athletic linebacker moves you've ever seen, go to Lions Wire and see Riz's.
I watched it.
Crap, man.
I watched it.
So what do you think of the Collins signing, Case?
Okay, so it's not to me just about the Collins signing, and I'm sorry to go a little bit left field on you guys with the topic here. It is about the thing that we have massively downplayed, to be honest, since Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia started here together anyway. And that is the bringing in Patriots dudes. And I know that this is like a triggering topic for a lot of fans. So I get it. I understand. And the truth of the matter is I've always understood the concept that bringing in expatriates can be a really bad thing because we've seen so many of them go to teams where they got overpaid on a contract and underperform. This situation is fairly unique. I'm not saying you shouldn't have those concerns. I'm not saying that at all. That it's fair, truly. But we are in a different place than most of those teams who have done that have been. And that is because, A, the Patriots are more cap-strapped this year than I can remember them ever being. That was an issue. And so they just couldn't re-sign everybody that they probably otherwise would have liked to re-sign. If you want to look back at the Patriots season and their defense and how well they played, they would probably have preferred to sit as much status quo on that as they could, but it just wasn't an option. We also have Patricia, and I know that there are many mixed feelings amongst the fan base. I get that. It is not a surprise to me that people feel that way. But he is also the singular person outside of Bill Belichick who probably understands how to use those players, those specific players that they picked up effectively out of anybody. Again, I'm not saying, because my prediction is in the realm of they will see significant improvement this year, but that does not mean playoffs. That does not mean I am in any way suggesting that I think Patricia and Quinn are safe. Okay. But it's become so blatantly obvious that they want to do things their way and see if it works. And Jamie Collins is a part of that, a big part of that.
And I'll say, people say, they didn't want to say it's their way, not the Patriots' way. I think it is like anybody. I don't know. I don't know what to relate it to. You get taught something by an expert. Those things become part of you. A lot of those things do. So, but also you look at it and say, I think I could do that better. Or I think I'd change that because I think that would work better. And then you say, that's your way. It may be your way inspired by something, but that's still your way. And when I hear Quinn saying, no, we're not doing things the Patriot way, we're doing things the Lions way. Well, very heavily trained in the Patriots way. And now he's tweaking that to his way. We'll see what that means. We'll see. Right now it's interesting. Last year we had a number of issues that we can point at and say, well, maybe that's why the team didn't do as well. That those things hopefully will kind of be different this year, and we'll be able to get a good gauge of where this coaching staff is and how the draft has been running and those kinds of things. I think this is a good year to see what the reality is. But that's where I think you're right. I mean, trained in the Patriots way, evolved into what will be the Lions way if they remain here for the medium to long term.
So I'll flip this. I'll put on my Browns hat again for a second. They have a new head coach this year in Kevin Stefanski, who came from the Minnesota Vikings. They have signed 4 or 5 players who have played under him at some point in Minnesota. And everybody in Cleveland is like, that's great. They know coach. They'll understand what he wants. Yep. It's interesting how that prism hasn't yet gone darkly negative in Cleveland, maybe because they haven't started losing yet. I'm sure that will happen
when that happens.
when that happens. God, they're so frustrating because they should be so freaking good. Yeah. But yeah, so like when I'm trying to think of who they signed that would make sense. The other thing I can equate it to is, you guys know I'm a big fan of the band Rush. Rest in peace, Neil Peart.
Love Rush.
I've heard of them. And a lot of old guys listen to them.
They talked about on their documentary that they did about how they were at a crossroads. It's great.
Go watch it, everyone.
Yes, please do. Watch it together. We should all watch it together. Oh, that'd be awesome.
We got time on our hands.
Yeah, we do. But they talked about how they were at a crossroads where they were going to get dropped by their record label, and they gave them basically one thing left. And they're like, you know what? If we're going out our way. And they put out their best album ever from that and became legends because of it. And another band that I'm a big fan of. So
goddamn polite.
Yes, they are. I'm a huge fan of the band Dream Theater. They had the same thing. Their first 2 albums were great. The third album was a tank job. They tried to go commercial, tried to be something that they weren't. Their record label's like, y'all got one left. And they went out and they did Scenes from a Memory, and it's the best album probably ever, in my opinion. And it won a legion of fans back, and it cemented them in prog rock gods that they are.
And another one of your favorite bands, same story, Steve Miller Band. Big old.
Why? What are we hating on Steve Miller Band now? What's going on?
If I could go back in time and prevent the birth of any one person, it would be Steve Miller.
That's how I feel about Bon Jovi. So.
You give love a bad name, my friend.
This could be a lot of fun for me in the future. But you got to remember where Case comes from, Riz. Let me see.
You
here, we'll try it again.
touching me, touching you. That's right, everyone. Neil Diamond for
Case's
life.
Generation.
Why did you do a music-centric podcast at some point?
Oh God, that would be
Actually, I think we'd be okay at that.
Yeah,
like, I
I think so.
honestly think that we'd be okay at that. Like, we've talked about doing other sports, but I think
Right.
maybe a music podcast would be more in our wheelhouse.
Definitely. Back to football.
Okay,
Stick to football.
really quick. One
To
quick.
quote another podcast.
Someone has to. Who are Rush? Someone else comes back with Limbaugh.
Who are Rush?
I don't see flames
Bye.
yet. I don't see flames yet, but we'll see. Okay, so
Take off, you hosers.
With that, let's open up for phone calls. 248-782-8384, 248-782-8384, or you can use Detroit Lions Podcast on Skype. That'll get through to us. Give us a call. Let's talk a little bit about the idea of transitioning to a 4-3 defense. Anyone feel good about that after we take this call?
Yeah.
Hey, caller, how you doing? What's your name?
Hey, this is Chris R.
Hey, Chris.
How you doing, man?
Chris,
I told him he had to call in
Hey,
today.
good. How
So
you guys doing?
Good.
we are having fun.
Were you calling for the Stevie
Yeah, I
Miller
think
Band trivia?
Okay.
No, go ahead.
let,
Chris.
let me feel this.
I grew up in the 80s hair bands thing. Actually, one of the first concerts that I went to was in the pit for a Bon Jovi concert at the
Nice.
Wow.
So that's kind of more my genre, I guess.
I spent time in the pit at Soundgarden at Lollapalooza back when Pearl Jam played and Tool. Oh God, those were good times.
Okay. So I told Chris he had to call in and talk to us about the shifting and relative value of offensive linemen. And I want him to talk to us about it. I want him to give us a little bit of a lecture.
Yes, please.
So one thing that I've been noticing, I've been going back, taking a little bit of a break from draft film, which obviously you guys know I do a lot really heavily, and kind of going back, and especially with Game Pass being free for a month, being able to go back and rewatch some of the pro teams and go back and watch some of the pro tape. So one thing that I've been increasingly noticing, and I found some data to back this up analytically, is that a lot of the blocking now, especially for heavier teams and more physically dominant teams like I think we want to end up becoming, a lot of your offensive linemen are finding more value as run blockers. Because what happens is a lot of these teams are becoming quicker and quicker passing teams. So they're getting the ball out in 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 seconds. And this is especially true for your more mentally savvy guys, your guys who have experience, who know how to go through reads, know how to go through progressions, or the opposite, and guys who have offenses that put them in like one read offenses, or very simple, just throw it to this guy, he's open type of scheme. Whereas with run blocking, it's not really that simple. You can't just say, hey, throw to this guy over here, throw to that guy on the other side, because it's a lot more of like a team effort, I guess is probably the best way to put it. So if one guy misses a block, say like Frank Ragnow misses the nose tackle blows up that run play. So what ends up happening is you have a lot of guys who kind of need to be good run blockers to find success running the ball. So what ends up happening is you get these more physically dominant players along the offensive line. And then they end up being able to work together a lot more to be able to open up those holes and communicate and find ways to maximize your running back's ability to find those holes because they're not losing their run block. So not only does that give your running back more options, first off, which is critically important, especially against physical teams, but it also gives them the opportunity to simply find an option. Because Rick Wagner was, I think, the 30th of 32 run blocking right tackles last year. And
Sounds
Vaitai,
right.
I think, was like top 10 among all tackles last year in run blocking. So having that kind of upgrade there is going to be critical. And personally, for me, I believe Matthew Stafford is one of those quarterbacks who has the mental traits and has the experience and has the knowledge and has the ability, I guess, to be able to find the right receiver, hit the open receivers consistently. And the receivers that we have, Galladay, Marvin, etc., have the ability to win those contested catches if they're not able to get open in time. So you can live with a little bit of a downgrade in your pass blocking if you keep on getting the ball out quickly before the pressure gets there. If the exchange that you're going to be getting from the run blocking side for carry on for whoever our running back 2 is next year, that's going to open up so much more possibilities, not just for in terms of vision and finding the right holes, but also just from a play calling standpoint, because you have the ability to open up your playbook a little bit more as well. So if you want to run more play action, you can do that and run those fakes and draw those defenders out or what have you. So it opens up a lot more possibilities from a play calling standpoint to have that run blocking. And then when you get your run game going, it keeps the offense on schedule a lot more, whereas your pass game, if you throw an incomplete pass, you're not moving the ball yet. It stays where it's at. Whereas if you can get 3 yards to carry, 3 yards to carry, 3 yards to carry, I mean, you're right there at the first down marker. Yeah.
So, okay, my basic question is, do you feel that we made a mistake? And I have my own opinion on this, and I'm sure everyone in this room,
you're by yourself.
No.
This broad room has their own opinion on it. Do you feel we made a mistake by letting Graham Glasgow go? How do you feel about the guard position in terms of the value?
Okay. So a little bit about Graham is I think that's more of a philosophical decision. That's the other thing I was going to call in to talk to you guys about too. Is I feel like a lot of the offseason moves that we made, while we didn't necessarily get better, I think they fit a lot more into the vision and the type of team build and philosophies that we want to go after. So, like, and even with the tackle position, the other example of this, right? Like, yes, Snacks might have been good 2 years ago, but Danny Shelton is younger. He's a little bit more agile, I think, than Snacks is at this point in his career. And same thing with Williams compared to Ashawn, a lot better pass rusher. But he still has the ability to be physical and maintain those gaps. So I think that a lot of it, too, has to come down to the team philosophy and build. And I think that Graham was not necessarily a fit for what that team philosophy and build is going forward. I personally view him as more of a zone guy who has the ability to kind of utilize that athleticism and get himself into space around the end, say like pull blocking or whatever.
And he went to an offense in Denver. That's what Denver does. They do the Kubiak system. That's straight zone blocking. It's a better fit for him.
Yeah, exactly. And good for them for getting someone like that.
Yeah.
Utilizes athleticism and get him doing what he does best. Whereas for us, I think we're heading in the exact opposite direction of that and going toward more of that power scheme, especially with Hank Fraley coming in, who ran a lot of power from what I remember when he was a player.
He did that at UCLA too.
Just dominate the front and push and generate that forward momentum in more of your power scheme. And Graham does not fit that to me.
All right.
So that's
absolutely.
why I like that move.
I completely agree, Chris, and thank you very much for. Like I said, I asked you to call in and give us some context on that, and I really appreciate it.
So the power-based running game, it's interesting because we had that and then we got away from it, and then they sort of have had an amalgamate because that's what Taylor Decker is. He's at his best going out, and instead of like going to a spot, he wants to go through the player to get to that spot. That's very suitable to Taylor Decker. It's very, very suitable to Frank right now. You're playing to the strengths of your two best players on your offensive line. That's probably a pretty smart decision. I don't know if it's going to work all that much, but we'll see.
All right. Hey, Chris, I'm going to let you go. We got to grab another one here, man.
Oh. Okay, well, I just want to add, and Vaitai, too, is kind of in that same kind of mold, too, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
I think we all agree on that, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yep. Have a nice day, guys.
Yeah. Thanks,
You too.
Chris.
See you, Chris. All right, we got a new caller. If I'm right, I'm doing this just by numbers. I don't have them memorized, but I think this guy is probably completely tanked. He sounds like he's from the South. Is this you, Brendan?
Cover your face, man.
I've been in quarantine for days. I can touch my face like crazy.
Have you picked
I
up?
forgot. I just touched my face too, and I thought about it. I'm like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that.
I've never realized how much I effing love touching my face until this thing started. And it's like, how you doing, Brandon, buddy?
You know what's funny is, you know how you got that little emoji that you have your hand slapped your face from when somebody said something. Somebody just out of the blue got on me and laughed. He said, "Hey, no hands to the face." So then I had to put my arms up. So
nice. Hey, how you doing, man?
So,
it's been a little bit. It's been a few
I'm doing good, man. I'm just not, as a serious note, something that I just read about the coronavirus is whenever you guys get any packages, and you know they either come in cardboard or plastic wrap, be sure you go ahead and get your contents out like you want, and then get rid of everything right away, and then wash your hands, because according to the NIH or whatever the agency is, they said 24 hours on cardboard and could be up to 3 days on plastic.
Well, I learned.
I've got like a gun belt. I've got
never trust your mailman.
I've got a gun belt, and there's instead of a gun in it, I've just got a bottle of Clorox. So it's all good.
There you go. You just hose down your delivery,
Here,
man.
I'll use my sleeve instead of my hand.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. What do you got for us, big guy? What do you got?
Well, I got three different little subjects here, and first of all, dealing with the Slay Patricia thing going on. I put this on Twitter, and this is from listening to Sirius XM NFL for many years.
Never heard of them.
They've always brought up stories of what Bill Belichick and how he will do something. When he brings in rookies, and I'm sure other coaches have done this as well, to interview, for instance, either be Senior Bowl or the Combine or what have you, what he has film clips of their very worst plays that they've had in the past year or so. And he will sit there and he will look at them and say, now you want to tell me what's going on here? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you do this? What are you going to do to correct this? How are you going to improve? And so on and so forth. He makes them squirm, man. And it really what it boils down to is how will they take the coaching? And so that's one point. And now Patricia's going to learn from that.
I think there's a mental toughness test there too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've been interviewed before, I've been in some pretty tough interviews, and I've been in some pretty easy ones. And the tough ones, obviously, you have to have your S together and keep it together. You can come out and just be like and break down in the car, but in that interview moment, right, you got to hold it together. And the guys that can hold it together and think on their feet, those are probably guys that can improvise and think on their feet when they're in the middle of a play as well. Those are probably guys that can be coached and work with you.
There you go. Now, something else that Bill Belichick has done on the opposite side. Now, you remember what Patricia was upset about was him yakking and carrying on with his buds at these combined workouts with other players, Sherman and whatever. Well, if they start talking shop, then they start talking about what they've done on the field and how they act, react, what they learned. And what they're doing is they're sharing information from how their team plays the other wide receivers. Well, who's on the team with the plays? It's Marvin Jones. What do you think Patricia's going to think about that? What are you doing telling him stuff like that for? You let him figure that on your own. And believe it or not, I got another little thing I found out backed up on this. Jeff, who's the right tackle and left tackle that was the president of the NFLPA?
Eric Winston. Eric Winston.
Eric Winston.
Yeah.
He was being interviewed one time, and this story was on Sirius. he was being interviewed on the radio one time, and they were asking him about this, that, and the other thing about plays and so on and so forth. And he was telling them about this and telling them about that. Well, Bill Belichick's got big ears. He heard him all about this, and he got his crew to research every play that Eric Winston was on and check him out, because the next time they played him, they destroyed him. And that's what kind of research he kind of does. And Patricia knows this, because also other coaches are going to do the same. So no wonder he's upset, and he's probably fronting them out in front of the entire crew as an example and said, this is what we got to worry about if you're getting on social media and blabbing about stuff. So it just made sense. It made sense to me. Of course, not the thing of it is, not everybody's going to know this. What they hear is, what the favorite player is always ragging on and carrying on about. And, well, Philly's going to find out they got their own problems. I just hope he doesn't turn into Asamoah,
I kind of hope he does.
I just touched my face again.
He's in the NFC at this point, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. We should just get some wipes on those hands. You don't know what your face putting those fingers, right?
I know.
There you go. Listen, a couple other things I'm going to bring out. I wanted to ask you guys, Jeff in particular, what's your view about Big B going against our three primo pass rushers we have in our division? You got Max, you got the Smith brothers, so to speak, and you got Hunter. What do you think?
I worry about that. I think you're going to get a lot of tight end help. One of the worries that I have is that they're going to, because Jesse James was essentially worthless last year, is that they're going to have to use Hawkinson more in line to help as a blocker, and that takes away from his value as a receiver, which is why he was drafted that high. It's a very legitimate concern. They're going to find help for him. They're going to have running backs that can hold their own. Carry-on's fantastic in pass protection by and large. It's definite worry, though, because if the Darrell Bevell offense likes to have long developing pass plays that go down the field. It's where Stafford's at his best, too. It's throwing the ball down the field. You need 2.8 to 3.2 seconds to get that down there. If you don't have that takes away from what you really want to do on offense. So it's a concern. It was a concern in Philadelphia, but they had Carson Wentz, who was he's probably a little bit more mobile than Stafford, but doesn't always show it. And by the way, he's hurt all the time, and despite being mobile and despite playing behind a Hall of Fame left tackle and a likely Hall of Fame right tackle, he still gets hurt all the time too. Just saying.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What do you think, Riz?
Interesting.
There's a good question from the chat. Is there anything that can save Jesse James? Can he get better, or have we seen peak Jesse James?
Based on
how can we say we've seen peak Jesse James in Detroit when he was much better in Pittsburgh? I mean,
Jesse James in Pittsburgh,
and I will cite him, John Ledyard, who's a friend of mine, who covered the Steelers for a long time. He actually now covers the Buccaneers. He's with I forget what his Pewter Report, I think it is. But we talked about Jesse James last summer before I saw him. Before I went out on the first day, I'm like, oh my God, that guy can't play. He can't move. And John had told me that was going to happen. It's like, he is the quintessential guy who looks decent for the Steelers, but he's going to go somewhere else, and you wonder how he ever played football.
Wow.
I was forewarned on that. And by the way, he wasn't the only one who said that. Jim Wexell from Behind the Steel Curtain expressed similar context to me before that. It's like, y'all are overpaying big time. If he's your number 2 tight end, he might be okay. But if you're asking,
but I mean, that's what we need. We need him to be the number 2 tight end. We don't need him to be the number 1 tight end. Yes, overpay. Yeah. I'm not going to argue.
Last year he was dreadful, and I'm somewhat bullish that Isaac Nauta can step up, because the Jesse James that I saw last year should not make the football team in 2020.
Sure,
but they can't cut him because of his salary.
I had understood that reports were that he was the most improved. That he was most improved. Now I don't know what that means. Maybe
I'm hopeful that he can get better, but I wouldn't bank on it. And actually, Kent Platt, Mathbon this morning was talking about. He had a really nice thread on Twitter this morning. I would encourage people to do that because it'll kill some of your time while you're quarantined up too. that he thought that tight end is probably a bigger need than what anybody would want it to be, and I kind of agree with him. That they need to get a – It wouldn't kill me if they drafted or brought in – I wouldn't draft it – a blocking tight end. Somebody who could come in and be that honestly, Tyrell Crosby playing as your sixth tackle.
Yeah, there you go.
That might be a way to go too.
Yep.
I was just going to ask about that because a lot of times these small school guys that just aren't big enough actually turn into be really good blocking tight ends, and have carved themselves a nice little career about that. And listen, one more thing, guys, and I'll go ahead and get out of here.
All right.
You guys were talking about bringing in players from other teams because that's where the coach came from. Look, you can look back as far as you want with when the Lions hired coaches from other teams, and they always bring in other players. I mean, you think even Marinelli brought in former Bucs players. What was the rusher? You remember him? Remember the primo rusher that he had that didn't turn out to be much of anything? And then before him was Mooch. He was bringing in 49ers, and before him it was Ross Boss. He brought in maybe a couple of Chargers. Of course, before that it was our boy Fonte. He was in the team already, so you didn't see that many. But they all do it. It's just this guy's brought in a lot because of the scheme is so specific. He's got to have guys that knows it. And look at who he's brought in now that is on this defense: the nose tackle, the edge, the linebacker, the safety, all up the middle are all former Patriots that know the scheme. So I'm thinking that we should see an improvement. Obviously, it's just on paper it looks great. Well, we'll see what happens as the year goes on, and hopefully Stafford can stay upright. And isn't that weird to sound like now we're hoping that he doesn't get injured again after 10 years and never being off the field?
Not even.
That's strange.
I'm not worried about
guys,
it.
I'll get out of here.
All
Take care, man.
Thanks,
Brandon. Good to hear from you, buddy.
All right. So for those that are listening, I have to tell you, there's a drinking game going on in the chat on YouTube. I don't know if you, Riz or Case, you know it.
I can't see it.
Not aware.
Every time Riz touches his face, it's a drink.
Oh shit!
I'm sorry, folks.
Drink.
You got one guy saying, "Now I'm starting to itch my nose."
Sorry. I wish I had a beer. I need a beer.
It was so funny.
My beer fridge is like right there.
Usually it's me, Jeff. Usually it's me. I'm usually the one who's like all up in my own grill. So
Wes is calling out wasted right now.
Sorry, guys.
Good, Rick. There we go, Drake. All right. Let's talk about that 4-3 defense. Riz, if you don't mind, let's break into that a little bit. Talk about what you see coming, what you think.
So Shelton is better as a 4-3 defensive tackle. I think Nick Williams coming in as a NASCAR package rusher or just regular rusher. That's a 4-3
NASCAR
position.
Package rusher. That's a term right there.
It is. You're going to see more of that.
Yep.
You're going to see a lot of that. I think it's something that you will see Jamie Collins possibly putting a hand in the dirt and lining up as the edge outside of Williams. I think you're going to see a lot more four-man front. It doesn't necessarily mean a 4-3, but you're going to see 4 men on the front, or alternatively, you will see 2 on the front and have. Actually, Chris Robbins was talking about this we did a little chat in the Slack. How Buffalo used to run it when they had Ted Washington and somebody else, and I can't think of who his name was, but they had the 2 like beef guys in the middle, and Danny Shelton could be one of those guys. And then you had like 3 or 4 linebackers that kind of clustered around them. And they sort of functioned as edges, but they also sort of functioned as ends, but also linebackers. And I can see Patricia loving that, honestly. So I think you'll see some of that based on how many linebackers they have on the roster right now. And I will say this again, they're not drafting a linebacker high. Sorry.
But Simmons, Jeff. Simmons. Come on, get on board.
My own feelings about Simmons, I think he's going to be a very interesting player. I'm very much worried that he's Obi Mawafunu 2.0. Thank goodness he's not in Detroit, so Chris doesn't have to say that.
I would nail that.
You're getting good, Chris.
Simmons has a lot of very appealing traits that I'm not sure the NFL will know how to use. Is probably the best way to say it.
Fair enough.
Interesting.
I won't argue with you.
I think he will either be Brian Urlacher as the middle linebacker in a straight 4-3 Tampa 2, or he's Troy Polamalu in Pittsburgh, except he's a lot bigger and doesn't tackle as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could take that though.
Those are the upsides. Those are his optimal positions. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't sneeze at getting Brian Urlacher or Troy Polamalu in the Detroit defense.
Even if Troy Polamalu missed a few more tackles, I'd still take that. Yeah.
Yeah. Great hair too.
All right, so let's talk about one last thing here before we get rolling. The way Bob Quinn has set up the draft, I think with the players he's got, we've touched on this just a little bit, Jeff. He's really, I mean, he's going to wind up with an Ohio State defensive player. It's either that's what's going to happen at 3, period. Now, with that being the case, the way he set things up right now, right? Either position, as either the cornerback of Okudah or the edge with Chase Young, one helps the other position, no matter which you get.
Yes.
Right. So we're in an interesting position as a team, and we've put some guys in the middle. We got 2 tackles here in free agency. With either the 2 guys, we can take them and then fix the next piece in the second round. Obviously, the Chase Young and Gladly second round would be just hellaciously awesome because you cover your cornerback there, you get your edge and Chase. That's a great thing. What do you think if we get Okudah in the first round, Riz? Who's because they're gonna go cornerback next, right? I mean, I'm sorry, they're gonna go edge line next, right?
Yeah, edge outside linebacker type player.
Yeah,
but primarily a hand in the dirt edge. If Caleb Chason is there, and he won't be, he'd be a good choice. If AJ Epinesa is there, he would be very interesting.
Yeah.
And he could be. I wouldn't count on it, but he could be there, and that would be because he, to me, physically is JJ Watt.
Right.
I'm not saying he's J.J. Watt, but he can do that. And J.J. Watt playing as the edge in a 4-3, and he's done that a lot more than they would have you believe.
Yeah.
He's devastating in that role.
Yeah.
So that would be a lot of fun.
They could stay healthy. He could bring the kind of, because Watt, that's one thing that he hasn't been able to do, is stay healthy for long periods of time recently.
Right.
You put Epinesa. Thank you, Epinesa in there, and just the availability piece. If he can beat that, he gives you the impact.
So he would be one. It's early. It's too early for a guy like Josh Uche or Bradley Anai or who's the other guy that I always lump in? Oh, Jonathan Greenard from Florida, late of Louisville. By the way, don't lump him with all the other Florida defenders who've sucked in the NFL. He's a Louisville guy who happened to play his last year at Florida. That's how you have to look at it.
Awesome. Okay. So Simmons, I think you wrote the article about it, Riz, right? He's all but canceled out of the draft for the Lions.
I would think so. It would be very surprising if he were the pick. Now, could they smoke? From everything I understand, the New York Giants like him a lot, and he'd be really good there too. And I really want to touch my face, and I'm trying so hard.
You just did a little bit ago.
Yeah, but do it, just so they can drink. Come on, just give they want to drink.
No,
Jeff,
yeah. Let me.
There you go. Hey, drink.
I think that the round, if you take Young first, obviously it's a lot easier to find a cornerback in that second round. A guy like A.J. Terrell, Jeff Gladney, even Damon Arnett, probably a little high for him. There's some people there that you look at. It's a lot easier if you get Chase Young first, because pass rushers, there's the whole arc of you get pass rushers a lot. Premium pass rushers don't come late in the draft.
I'm very okay with this scenario.
Yeah, it's just a day one cornerback. Okudah's the guy, right? I mean, he's a number one.
He is more above at number one cornerback than Young is at number one edge next. Based on the next people below.
Yeah,
it's not a great cornerback class at the top, other than Okudah, but the middle class is really nice.
Yep.
All right, middle class is really nice for those of you lucky enough to be there.
Oh God,
we're getting political again.
Millennial wine. All right,
I just want to scratch my nose so bad.
Life is hard. With that, outside of that topic, is there anything you want to wrap up with, Case?
No, I don't want to wrap anything up.
Get back in your corner. All right, Riz, anything you
want?
want?
Like my lower class self. It's,
Well, besides your personality.
I'll
Riz,
touch this way. No.
Drink anyway.
God, it felt so good.
Drink.
All right.
I got nothing.
All right.
I'm
With
good.
that, we're going to ask you, go ahead and check out Eric Schlitt's stuff, Lions Breakdown Podcast. He's
Please
doing
do.
some great stuff this week, and we're working together to make sure we can kind of, like I said, give you guys an ongoing feed so that you can, from day to day, have good quality content. And, with no sports, you get friends like us to hang out with and get you some good stuff. So support him, support us, have some fun. And with that, we're going to call it a show because we do that this time of the day. We're going to remember to ask you to use the subreddit to give your feedback. Love that involvement from you guys when you help us out and let us know how we can improve the show. Also, don't forget about us on Patreon, patreon.com/DetroitLionsPodcast, patreon.com/DetroitLionsPodcast. If you were there donating at least $1 a month, you'd be in the Slack and you'd know who the big guest we're working on right now is. There you go. Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/the Detroit Lions Podcast, Detroit Lions Podcast on Instagram, and make sure to follow us on Twitter at DET Lions Podcast, DET Lions Podcast, the very best place to see Case
in social isolation. Touching me, touching you. Thank you.
Give us a call on Skype, Detroit Lions Podcast, all one word, Detroit Lions Podcast, or call us on the Lions line at 929-33-LIONS. 929-335-4667. Remember, if you're not feeling well,
Dr. Riz right here for you. I got your back, folks.
There you go. All right. Be sure to go to DetroitLionsPodcast.com, subscribe to the podcast so we can show up in your plugs automatically. And thank you for tuning in. We're going to see you next time on the Detroit Lions Podcast. Remember, no pants, no toasters, no hot tubs, no problems, baby, because we're your Detroit Lions and Reddit connection. All right. Thank you, YouTube. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, guys.
We might have gone a little longer, but I got to pee really, really bad.
I also have to go.